In Brampton East, the MPP there, his name is Guritan Singh. You might recognize that. He's the brother of the federal NDP leader, Jagmeet Singh. But he lost this time. He got thumped, actually. He got just 30% of the vote, losing to a conservative candidate who was also Sikh, by the way. It's very interesting to me what's happening in the Sikh community. There are Sikhs in every party, and there seems to be a Sikh anger with the Singh family, Jagmeet and Guritan. There's fascinating videos all over social media of members of the Sikh community sort of chasing Jagmeet Singh around at public events, going to his events, finding him on the street and hollering at him, driving by and hollering at him, calling him a sellout, saying that he's selling out to the tyrant. And I thought, well, maybe this is some internecine quarrel within that ethnic community that I just don't understand. But we had our reporter Lincoln Jay talk to these guys, and I've tried my best to figure it out. No, I think it's what it looks like on the face of it. I think these Sikh activists truly think that Jagmeet Singh has sold out, including selling out to Justin Trudeau federally. I don't know why they would be mad at Guritan Singh provincially, unless it's just the two brothers or peas in the pod. Remember that during the trucker convoy, many Canadians discovered something that maybe they had only a vague sense of before, that an enormous number of truckers in Canada, for whatever reason, happened to be Sikh. And there were quite a few trucker protesters at the Ottawa convoy who I think had a political awakening. I follow one fella on Twitter, I think his name is Parminder Singh, and he's a Sikh trucker who came alive, and he's become this amateur pundit every day with new short videos. I think a lot of Sikhs had their politics flipped on by the authoritarian crushing of civil rights by Trudeau. And I think they're just actually appalled that Jagmeet Singh, who holds himself out as such a pure idealist, would give support to Trudeau. I think we should take these Sikh critics at face value. And I think it bodes very ill for Jagmeet Singh. Maybe he'll lose his seat in the next election too. Maybe that's why he's joined up with Trudeau. He wants to delay and defer the next election as long as possible. So why did this all happen? Why did Doug Ford win when Erin O'Toole was thrown out, when Jason Kenney was thrown out? Well, first of all, Erin O'Toole and Jason Kenney were not defeated in a general election, but rather by their party. Their conservative parties had no more time for them. I think federally, the truckers were the proximate cause of Erin O'Toole's departure. In Alberta, there were a lot of things, including the fact that Alberta has a tradition of having new parties to throw out the old, and those new parties typically being of the right. And in Alberta, independent media, including Rebel News, is very strong. True North is there, but also the Western Standard. That's the name of the magazine I used to run 15 years ago. It's been revived in Alberta as a website, and it's quite conservative. So you have a lot of independent, Western-oriented, freedom-oriented journalism in Alberta that I think really connected with people. And the fact that backbenchers in that party were not thrown out for criticizing the lockdowns. So I think there was a real democracy there, real choices. But here in Ontario, as soon as MPPs were kicked out of the party by Doug Ford, they were anathematized, not just in politics, but by the media. The media treated anyone kicked out by Doug Ford as cranks, as weirdos. They echoed Doug Ford's own language of those yahoos and COVIDiots. I think that you have a political and journalistic monoculture in Ontario. You had no real choices. You had no real conversation. Like I say, the Green Party was added as controlled opposition to a government-run debate. TVO is the government-owned provincial TV station in Ontario. You had no real alternative. And I say again, it didn't help that Derek Sloan and Jim Karahalios and Randy Hillier and the others were splittist and made it impossible for a freedom-oriented small party to put it down any roots. I think Doug Ford today is less atrocious than he was 6 months ago when he was brutally enforcing the lockdown. But Doug Ford will literally say anything his handlers tell him to say if they show him a few polls to convince him it's the politically pragmatic thing to do. Don't think for a second that Doug Ford would not lock down Ontario again if his handlers told him to do so. The Liberal leader, Del Duca, threatened to re-lock down. He didn't wait for the fall. He said he wanted to do it. I think that's one reason people were spooked by him. That was an excerpt from my daily TV-style show called The Ezra Levant Show. Each weekday, I do a monologue on the news of the day. Then I interview a fascinating guest. I read some fan mail or hate mail, depends on which I like more. And we end with a video of the day. You can get it all at rebelnewsplus.com.